Hello, everyone. This is part two of the advanced consolidation exercise review that I was going through to help people, navigate through this and really internalize what they, you know, expect us to get out of it uh, from the Blue Prism University. I went through yesterday the startup page. We fixed the business objects and we were able to navigate to the next page. However, um, you know, this here is not the best way to handle the exceptions here. This will just throw an exception if we don't do anything. And, what we want is at least, retry a couple of times before you give up, right? So we have to adjust this design just a teeny weeny little bit to suit our needs. So I'm going to make a few changes, right? Some of which are, just cut this. Oops, I don't want both of you. I just want one. I'm gonna paste this here aside. So what I want to do is I want to add like sort of like a retry loop, so that it's gonna try three times before it gives up and throws an exception. And um, I'm also going to put a more descriptive system exception there, or you know, yeah, descriptive system exception is a good way to express it. So I'm going to put all these elements in very quickly to design that loop. Um, they have given us a lot of. Let me close this. This here, they already have the variables there in the design. They want us to retry three times before throwing an exception, right? So we're just gonna design the logic very, very quickly. And so we put in the text, we try, and basically put in an expression to say, okay, if it's less than three times, try again, right? And if it's a system exception or an internal type of exception, it's okay for you to try again. But if it's a business exception, don't bother. I'm not gonna type all of that. I already typed this before the video. It looks like it's a little bit of typo here, but I got it. So this is the expression. We're gonna put it in here. This needs to be on one line. And I'm gonna validate this is invalid. Why is that? So something's wrong with my, maybe I need to just retype that again. Let's see. Please check the case of your operators. Okay, just give me a moment. Okay, so I've looked at the expression again and it looks fine. So I'm just going to try validate, and once the expression is valid, it'll work. So I connect all of this by link stage. This would be, before it will work, I have to link all of them together, right? And the main thing is that I need to call this retry count and add one here. That is each time you fail, try again, resume, and then store the increment into retry count until, I'm sorry, I have to name this count. So what this does, I mean, you use this very frequently in real world development. So I hope I'm not going too fast. So you link this to that and essentially say, if, so the logic is if the retry count is less than the retry limit, which is 3, and lower exception type is system exception or internal, then try again, right? And when you're trying again, increment the count by 1 and then resume. So it's going to loop over this and then try to log in to BP again. That's if it failed, right? And then it'll do that 3 times before it throws an exception. But it makes sense to sort of reset. I mean, it's not a major deal, but um, you know, after you finish trying 3 times, one should reset the count, right? Reset the retry count. So how do you do that? You use the calculation stage to reset retry count. Again, this is not really fancy stuff. It's just I set it back to 0, and let's say okay, and basically link this stage, right? So just make sure you reset it after you've tried 3 times before you end, right? Or if you tried again, I'm sorry, and it worked before you end the page, reset the retry count, right? So last thing to do is to link this to the exception stage and provide more appropriate detail. So probably system exception is the best, and then you might say something like, let's see, what are we trying to do? Failed to log into Blue, is it? I'm sorry, BP travel application. Or, you can basically just grab the exception detail, and I'll review that later if it is necessary. It makes more sense to probably just grab the exception data and report it, but that's really also a good way to do it, exception. All right, so we're done with this. We can now move on to the next page like we were supposed to move on. So this one, again, they've built this process. They're just testing your understanding of some of the underlying concepts. And what they want here is they want us to review our capabilities for exception handling, okay? And sort of more gracefully handle all the exceptions that could occur. Like right now, it's a very simple one. It says if it fails, write to a log file and throw an exception. But we want to, try a couple of times before we just throw an exception. We want to, recreate the scenario and try a couple of times before we finally throw an exception. So we have to modify this logic a little bit to accommodate that eventuality. So what will happen is I'm going to need to this block is not going to work for everything. So I'm going to have to reduce the scope of this block in a sense so that oopsie daisy. I'm using I think it started right under files. Anyway, yeah, I think started right under file. You know what? Just undo. I already forgot where it started. Okay, started here. All right, so I'm gonna reduce the scope of this, right? Yeah, my hands are so. I'm gonna start this block under here. I want to make a couple other changes, right? I should get my actual mouse. I'm using like the mouse pad to do this, and anyway, that's not your problem. That's more of mine. So I just wanted to increase the scope of this. Now I'm going to have to, shall we say, move these guys down because I need some space here. So I want to select all of them and just draw them down a little bit so I can add on my logic here, maybe a little more. Oops, it is. Yeah, I definitely should get that mouse because I'm struggling to control it with the trackpad. I used to be very good at that once upon a time. All right, so just give it some space and then pull in a recover stage, right? I mean, there's nothing really stopping us from using this one. Pull in a recover stage right here. And then we're going to say that instead of you just throwing this simple retry state, let's make it more graceful. Let's increase the scope of what it does. So I'm going to, very similar to what we did on the last page, I'm going to need one of these, right? So I'm going to copy that so I don't have to type all of that again. I'm going to need one of these here to give it like a sense of why or when should I retry, right? And again, the logic is just pretty much the same as we said. And we're also going to need to put in two new data items which are not present here but are present on the other page, which is the retry limit and retry count. So these are not present here. I'm going to put them there. I'll just keep them within sight for now. They really should be in those in these blocks with the data items, but just to keep them visible. So I'm going to say, okay, if you cannot read this file, then recover this and retry based on these reasons which we discussed in the last thing. So this is where I'm going to put my resume stage, right? And then, increment the counter to same way we did last time. And just copy and paste to save time. I think we're going to populate the queue. So I'm going to paste that here. So increment count, right? Or should we say increment or retry count? Probably better. So it's more. And then, we're going to call in an Excel VBO item, or action rather, to close the workbook. Now it has tried to read a file, it didn't succeed, and then we're asking it to recover, and we're building the path of recovery. So Excel VBO is the one, then we'll close workbook, right? And we'll put in all the variables. There's already a handle in here. These are all collections, just reduce them. So where's my handle? That's there. Is the workbook name. It's here. And save data. Well, I'm not interested in doing that, so any outputs? No. All right, so again, just close this so you can see clearly. I'll reduce the name so you can see what it does. Then next thing I'm just gonna copy and paste this to save time in doing that again. Because I'm also gonna use the Excel VBO for that, but this time I want to kill Excel. Actually, that's a different process. So I'm gonna need yet another one here. That's a different action item. So this business object that I'm going to need to kill Excel is the, I think it's the environment one, and then kill process. then it's Excel in capital letters, close quotes. So kill Excel, all right? And then this one, I'm going to create another Excel instance here again, using the same VBO. Create, come on, create instance, right? And false, this is to kill pop-ups. And then use this handle. It's going to be a long scroll unless I collapse this. Right, and then okay. So essentially, this is the path of recovery, right? This is the path of recovery. And that's not all there is to it, but this is the main path of recovery. So if we try to read the file and it fails, recover, try again, resume the process again, I'm blinking, increase. So this is the first time you would, your retry count will be 1. And I'm saying close the workbook, kill the Excel program. I'm supposed to rename this. I forgot to rename it. Create instance is what this is. All right. And then basically try again, right? So you'll do that as many times as 3 times, which, from our retry limit here is 3, right? So the third time, if you fail to do this, then you can give up, right? And throw, gather the exception details and save them, okay? So I think this is the main path, but then sometimes, just to cover all bases, you may need to move this away from here, because this is gonna continue along these lines, right? So when you try to kill Excel, you might not succeed. So we will try to put another like a recovery logic around closing the workbook and killing Excel, just to be on the safe side. So put in another block around this. Again, we probably need to move these out just a teeny weeny bit, right? And we'll just call this a close Excel block. And basically, you're trying to say that if it doesn't work out, try again, right? So I'm going to pull in a resume stage, right? And a recover stage here. Recover, resume. Okay. So I guess a better way of explaining this is if you try to close the workbook and it doesn't work out, recover, right? For whatever reason, if you try to close this workbook and it doesn't work out, catch the exception, then resume, right? You see my arrow? And then forcefully kill Excel when you resume. So that's actually the better way to explain what's going on here. Okay, so I'm just going to scoot this over a little bit for aesthetics sake. So where our exception handling is coming into, is taking shape, I'm just going to scoot over to mark as complete, mark item as exception, and grab, let me see if I can, no, best place to grab it is from startup, so we don't have to type. This is how we gather the exception details, right? It's something similar was done here. So we go back to populate queue and we paste that here. Move these guys over just a little bit, right? All right, and then, what is this? Save exception details. And it's basically just a calculation stage that assigns details, that assigns the exception type and exception detail to the global variable. So you can insert that in your reporting. So we're going to connect this to that. And then when you do that, you can resume. I think I need to move this over just a little bit to fit that in. So you can resume, put in a resume stage. And then write log to file. You call that page write log to file after you resume. All right. And then if there's a problem writing the log to file, then you throw a system exception. All right. Preserve this. Put in the details. I'll put in the details a little bit later. Right. And you throw an exception that says, you didn't succeed in reading the file. I'm sorry. So, all right. And then you also want to put another block around this area here to just capture and record any exception that might occur. Maybe you didn't succeed in writing to log file, right? You want to capture that exception. So you just quickly put a recover stage here, and I think I'll just copy this for now and paste here. This time I would call this writing to log. Right. So this here is basically the logic of handling all the exceptions that might show up as gracefully as possible, so the system doesn't just crash because something went wrong. You actually have very, very gracefully handled the exceptions. I think the only thing that will be left here is, we have to, fill out what exactly happened, right, for each item. So, oh dear, I'm afraid I'm going to have to type that, but essentially we're going to say error writing to log, for example, right? That's not the one for this one. So error reading file is what I should write here. Error reading file. So that's the one I opened. And then this is really concatenation. So I'm just going to put a space here, and to concatenate, and then call exception detail, which we captured in this multi-calculation stage right before this. And then call, after writing the test, original exception. I have to do this once, thankfully. Always copy, close this, and then call the exception detail. Exception type, I'm sorry, which in itself is a variable or a data item, as we call it in Blue Prism. So just so this is a little bit clearer for you, let me open this. Then you put an and here because you still have to concatenate a little bit. I think you need, you need this, and then an and, again an ampersand, to call exception detail. Exception detail, which is also a data item. All right, so do I have everything I need? I think so. I think the only thing is I need to put this in between. brackets. Let me validate the expression. Missing data. There should be an and here, I think. Ampersand. Exception type missing data. Exception type. Does that mean I haven't instantiated it? Let me see. Hold on a minute. Exception type. Oh, right. This one has a space in between. Mine doesn't. All right, let me see. I think I was doing this one. So it's just telling me that that's not quite. Exception detail 2 must have a space in between them. Right, so, okay. So I'm just going to copy this. I need it on the other. All right, so the same thing I'm going to do here. The only thing that's going to change is for a different reason. It's not reading file this time, it's writing to log. Writing to log. All right, so, I mean, when you've done this, you have handled the exceptions as gracefully as you possibly can at this point, right? And so your next move would be to, let me see if there's anything else to do on this page at this point. There are other things, but later in the process, we'll deal with that. So I think these guys need to be, all of these need to be scooted over just a little bit to our right. And then these guys should be in this block. It should be in this block. They should all be in this block. To the best of my understanding, they should all be in this block up to, well, no, maybe not. Maybe they don't need to be in the block. I just need to move this up a little bit so it covers here, right? So that will be the recovery required for that. And we've basically, you know, I don't know if you want me to go through this again, but you know, it basically says if you want to try and read this file and it fails, recover, retry, resume as you're resuming, increment the counts, close the workbook. If you fail to close the workbook, kill Excel, resume, and kill Excel forcefully. If you close the workbook successfully, fine, go ahead and make sure the Excel program is completely closed. And then create a new instance, right? And then read the file again. Do that 3 times. And if you fail, find out what caused the problem. Resume, write the log to file, whatever you found in this exception detail, and then throw an exception. If you fail to write the log to file, then throw an exception explaining why. Now we're just going to quickly scoot to the view to write to log file page to make sure that it works before we finish this video. And the activities on this page are basically start, append the logs to file, and succeed. And if I open the action, it's looking for a path, and the message will come from the previous page we just left, and it'll be written onto the file. That's it pretty much. And if it's a success, you'll get something written in this data item. The problem though is that the path we have not provided. So if you try to run this page, you will fail. So I'm just going to quickly go to the file and right click and say new text document. I'll say error message, right? And then, you know, you can put your finger on shift and then right click. And then the option to copy as path will come out. And you take that one and put it in the path. You paste that there and remove the quotes. And then it will know that that's where you want it to write the message. The last thing to do is we also need to, what kind of exception it is. And it's probably most likely a business exception. because you know, it has something to do with invalid data, input data. So you just change that. And why is it still reading unknown exception? Okay, because it wants us to change. All right. So again, when we test it, we're going to find out really what kind of exception it is. Could be a system exception. So here we are. We've done all these changes, and I mean, literally, we could give it a shot now. There are some other comments on this, such as, you know, send an email alert. I don't know if we're required to do that, but you know, that's outside the scope of what I'm going to do. Um, but it's pretty much easy. You just use the Microsoft Outlook VBO item to send messages from the local output email to whoever is in the FRQ. Other than that, I think it's a good place to stop because I don't want these videos to be too long. And what we'll do is, you know, test and see very, very quickly where we're at. So I'm going to click start. Oh my gosh, I think I have it on this super fast setting. We're not going to see it move. So right, system exception, error writing to log. So this was the failed to write out to log file, workbook not found. Quotes. So what has happened here is that, let me just explain it briefly to you. So the thing about this process is that it was built to when pick up a workbook, right? And then when it gets it, load it. Let me see if I can explain that to you. If it succeeds in getting the workbook, close the workbook and then create code cases. And we'll get into that next time based on what it finds in the logbook. So it has quickly done all of that. And then because it's a loop, it goes back to open the second file. There's supposed to be two files in there, right? And then when it tries to read the second file, it fails. It tries 3 times and then it fails. So that's what has happened. And it has, oops, daisy. Don't open Outlook. So that's what has happened in this instance. Initially, we started with 2 files here, and now we have only 1 because it succeeded in reading 1. Stubborn Outlook is still opened. Succeeded in reading 1, but if you notice this second quotes file is just 1 KB, and if you try to open it manually, you will find out that it actually was intentionally put there, it seems, because it doesn't work. So it's basically testing how would you manage your exceptions, right? So I did that. Maybe I shouldn't have put it on the super fast setting, right? So next time I won't do that so that we can step through the process. But the point is that we have, I mean, you saw for yourself how it read the problem out, explained to us that it's because there was a problem with the quotes 2 file. So it couldn't read the file. So it tried 3 times and then it gave us the reason for the results. I think at this point it's a great place to stop. Okay. Right now we will continue this program on the next video, but we've taken some major steps because I don't know that it gets easier, but you know, we move on to different concepts at the next stage. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed this and you found it a little useful. I'll make another one to deal with the next steps in the process just as soon as I can find some time after work. Thank you and have a nice day.